Hey, this is Vanessa Marshall. I play Hera Syndulla on Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to the Jedi Temple Archives podcast. May the Force be
of the Jedi Temple Archives podcast.
There is more knowledge here than anywhere else in the galaxy. Only members of the Jedi Council are allowed access. Guarding the holocrons is one of the most important duties a Jedi can be given. Do you think you're up to the task?
Star Wars fans, welcome to another episode of the Jedi Temple Archives podcast. I'm your host, Rob, and we are recording this episode on Tuesday, November 19th, 2019. Now, before we get started on our main topic, I did just want to take a moment to take care of a couple of housekeeping items that we had this week. The first being that with it being November, or Mandovember as we're calling it, with the release of The Mandalorian on Disney+, I do have a couple of autographed photos that Dominic Pace had sent along after his interview last week of his character, who we are just referring to as Gecko at this point until he is given a formal name within The Mandalorian. Definitely look for his character in episode 3, which is going to be coming out this Friday, which would be the 22nd of November. So all you need to do to have a chance to win is to follow us on either Facebook, Twitter, and or Instagram at JTA Podcast. Reply to the post that is the giveaway post that we have on those sites, and then make sure that you like that post and share or retweet it. And that will get you an entry to win one of those 2 autographed photos of Dominic's character. And trust me, I've got one that he had sent for me up in my office, and it looks great. It's super cool looking character, and I think any Star Wars fan is going to want one. So the other item that I wanted to point out is this past weekend on November 17th, I traveled to Chicago to do a joint live stream event on YouTube with Scarif Podcast and WSTR Media. We also had Michelle from Fulcrum's broadcast that we brought in. She was there watching us. And we also had Yoshi Vu from Industrial Light and Magic, ILM. He's a senior artist. He worked on both The Mandalorian and The Rise of Skywalker, was there for the live event. Could not have asked for better hosts than the Alley Cat Comics gang, where we recorded the show. We did record outside, which was pretty interesting. We probably could have called it WampaCon, and that would have been appropriate. It was fairly cool, but it gave the folks that came out to watch us a chance to actually get to see us. It would have been a little cramped in the comic book store. And you can find that video out on YouTube, as I mentioned. Just do a search on Scarif Podcast, and that will come up for you. You can check that out. It's a couple hours, a lot of fun, and just great friends, great time. Totally worth the trip out and back. All right, before we jump into this week's main topic, I do just want to take a quick moment to thank our new sponsor, Lucas Family Travel. Are you interested in taking a trip to the planet of Batuu and the ultra-immersive world of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge at either the Walt Disney World Resort or the Disneyland Resort? If so, the one thing that I can tell you from personal experience is that planning any Disney vacation can be completely overwhelming. That's why you need the expert planning services of Casey Lucas at Lucas Family Travel. Casey can help you to select the perfect resort, book your fast passes, your dining reservations, including those hard-to-get Oga's Cantina reservations, and even recommend the perfect time to visit based on the historical crowd levels. And the best part is that all of these services are completely free to you and included as part of your Disney vacation package. So visit lucasfamilytravel.com today to book your vacation package and enter the promo code JTA Podcast in the comments to receive a free gift with your booking. Again, that's LUCAS familytravel.com to book your trip today. And as they say, all right, so for this week, with the release of Disney Plus and the fact that we now have access to all of the wonderful content that comes with that, including the Star Wars content, What we are going to do is kind of go back to what we had done a few weeks ago when we did the series on why you should be watching the Clone Wars, and tell you a little bit about why you should be watching Star Wars Rebels, which is another wonderful animated series produced by Dave Filoni. And to help me along with that, I have some special guests on the podcast today. I've got the gentlemen from the Disney Discussions podcast who are a supporter of us and some good friends. And we've got Tony and his boys Sparrow and Stitch on the line. So guys, thank you so much for joining me for this episode.
Hi.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
We're excited. We love your show.
Yes.
You do a great podcast, so we're excited to be on and talk some Rebels.
Give Tom all the credit. He makes me look good. So unfortunately, he couldn't be here with us tonight. He's off enjoying an awesome night of Moonlight Madness at the Disneyland Resort. So
oh, nice.
He's I'm sure heartbroken to have to go through that for the children, as we always say, right?
Right.
So what I do with all the guests that we have on the podcast is I run them through what I call the Jedi Trials, and it's just a series of a few questions where our listeners can kind of get to know you guys a little bit better. We've never had anyone fail the trials, so by the end of this, you guys should all be on the Jedi Council with us, right? So
Sweet.
Yeah. So first thing I'll ask you guys is, what is your favorite Star Wars movie or show?
My favorite Star Wars movie is probably Revenge of the Sith.
Cool. And that was Sparrow.
Yeah.
My favorite Star Wars movie is probably The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
And my favorite show is The Mandalorian.
It's probably a popular pick these days.
Yeah. Mine is the classic Empire Strikes Back. A lot of people's pick. Nothing has ever beat that movie, and I don't know if anything will. Some things have come close, but Empire has a special place in my heart, and I just love that movie.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing that those movies still hold up, 43 plus years later. And you can sit there and watch them, and it's just amazing the technology they developed to put those on the big screen for us. So, and now that with Disney Plus, they've remastered a lot of it. They've improved a lot of the shots. And I know there's been a little bit of tinkering, but I don't think Empire was really affected too much by that. Certainly, George Lucas has been a tinkerer since the beginning. There's a lot of people I don't think that have ever seen the original cut of many of those original trilogy movies because he was changing them even a few weeks after they were initially released.
Yeah, even including, my boys have never seen the non-special editions. So
right.
But Empire, like you said, Empire I like because it is the least kind of altered.
Yeah.
He added some stuff in the background of Cloud City, and he made some changes to the Wampas. But otherwise, he did a good job with what he needed, what he added, and it's perfect. Some of the other stuff, we've been rewatching the movies in preparation for Rise of Skywalker, and some of the special edition stuff doesn't hold up. The older original stuff does, but the special edition stuff does not hold up.
Yeah, we're definitely spoiled by what they can do with CGI and special effects work these days, and I think that's really where those, the prequel films tend to get hurt a little bit. But all right, so with the next question, I'm going to ask you guys, what is your favorite Star Wars character? And we'll start with Stitch this time.
Either Kylo Ren or Rey. One of those.
We're gonna give you the Michelle special dispensation, and you can give us two answers. All right, Sparrow, what do you say?
Anakin Skywalker.
Nice. Definitely a great tragic character.
Yeah.
And Tony the Disney Dad.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. So many good characters, but I always go back to Yoda. I love Yoda. Especially in the original trilogy, you had just enough of Yoda. I love the playfulness in Empire, and then he comes on as this wise Jedi. Yoda's my favorite.
He's so weird.
Count to again. Yes.
There we go. We have our, I actually had a chance to meet Tom Kane, who does the voice of the animated Master Yoda at Grand Rapids Comic-Con this past week, and hopefully he doesn't hear Stitch's impression, or he might start worrying about his future. Using that character, right? Awesome. So this one should be a fun one for you guys. What is your favorite droid? And Tony, we'll start with you on this one.
R2-D2. I love R2-D2. He's sassy. You don't know what he's saying, but you a lot of times you can kind of guess what he's saying. He's helpful when he needs to be helpful. R2-D2.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me like that. C-3PO.
That's C-3PO saying that, yeah.
Right. Sparrow, what do you got?
C-3PO is definitely my favorite droid.
Nice.
He's like really funny, and then he always says the wrong things at the wrong time.
Yeah. Stitch, what do you think?
BB-8.
I knew that was coming. That is one of the great things about Star Wars is they do such a great job with the droids. And, you know, like you were saying, Tony, even the ones that you can't understand or you shouldn't be able to understand, you can always get a feel for what they're saying.
Yeah.
Terrific. All right. So this one's going to be a little bit tricky because I don't know how much, I'm sure you guys have some Star Wars toys, but what is your favorite Star Wars toy or collectible?
Who are we starting with?
Go ahead. You go, Stitch.
I really like the Darth Vader Black Series figure where you could take off his helmet. It's really cool.
That is a good one. Good pick.
Sparrow.
Mine is either my Anakin Black Series I just got or my old Han Solo Black Series.
Nice. Is it the Han Solo Hoth battle gear?
No.
No, it's the classic Han Solo.
No, it's the one from Force Awakens, right?
Yeah.
That's what he meant by old Han Solo.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I see. Again, here we go. I'm stuck in the past, right?
Yeah.
And Tony.
I still have my original, it's beat up, but my original Millennium Falcon that came out in like the early 80s. And the boys have it. It's in the basement now. That's probably my favorite. I have a lot of, you know, Funko Pops and other Black Series figures, but that's my childhood right there.
Right. Yeah, and I mean that was such a huge thing for so many of us to be able to have a toy like that where you could take off that kind of back quarter panel and access the hollow chest room, and it was just amazing to be able to put the action figures in there, and you could create all kinds of fun memories with that. So that is an excellent choice. That is certainly not unusual for someone that was around during the original trilogy. Those of us who are still going strong, right? All right, so the last question you guys have to answer for me before we get into the Rebels stuff. What is your favorite Star Wars memory? Tony.
My favorite Star Wars memory. I think it's seeing Force Awakens with my boys. That was the first movie we experienced in the theater. Got to see their reactions, got to see their faces to everything. Everything was new, and they did a good job with that movie. And you know, Sparrow had an emotional reaction to Han Solo at the end there, and that it's amazing that a movie that touched me as a kid, or you know, the storyline, then touched my own kid, and like he was affected emotionally by what was happening on the movie screen. It was really cool to experience that with them on the big screen. Yeah,
I can completely relate to that. I had the same experience with my son. He was not happy when Han Solo got killed.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, by the way, for anyone who hasn't seen Force Awakens. All right, what do you got, Sparrow?
It's probably seeing A New Hope for the first time. I really liked seeing it for the first time.
Stitch?
This is hard because I don't have a lot of Star Wars memories.
There are no wrong answers.
But it's probably seeing Force Awakens. You know, it's my first Star Wars movie seeing in theaters. And I just really, like, when I first saw it, because I think that's, like, really the first one I actually got into. Because I've seen the other ones, and I was like, I wasn't really interested in them. But this one, I just, like, really thought it was so cool.
Yeah, it's a big difference seeing them on the big screen, too, right? Instead of just watching them on your TV at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially experiencing with a whole theater full of people. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I mean, there were, so many memories of being in theaters. Tom and I have talked about it ad nauseum. And I know that we've talked about having a whole nother discussion about how different generations have kind of embraced Star Wars, because I know both of your boys enjoy the prequel films. And, with Stitch, he's probably, like he's saying, Force Awakens was his first film in the theater, and he's probably got an attachment to the sequel films between liking that experience and, having The Last Jedi be one of his favorite films. So
yeah.
It's really interesting to see how different generations have come to it. My son came to it through playing the Star Wars Angry Birds.
Oh, that's right. I remember. I forgot about that. Yeah.
So strange way to come through it. But you guys all did awesome on that. Certainly passed with flying colors, and welcome into the Jedi Order. You guys are now fully fledged Jedi and are ready to talk some Star Wars Rebels, right?
Awesome.
Yeah,
let's do it. Ooh, I was worried there.
No, you're totally good.
I don't have a shot!
Chopper, do you have the coordinates?
What did he say?
He said hello, hyperspace.
Nice and quiet like.
Jedi Master Luminara and Julie is being imprisoned somewhere in the Stygian system.
We can't pass this up.
Good luck.
Come on, kid, do something. Use the Force. Ezra, your formal Jedi training starts tomorrow. I am the Inquisitor.
We're busted.
Chopper, get us out of here!
Oh, look, Chopper, make friends.
Hera, you're good to go.
The odds of our mission becoming a complete debacle are... Don't you shush me.
This is the Padawan I encountered on Stygian Prime.
Have no fear. Help is on the way. Advance and fire! There's a lot more at stake than you realize.
What's the worst that could happen?
We both wind up dead. Well, kid, you pulled it off.
Was there ever any doubt?
Yes.
For those of you who would like to avoid major spoilers, there are two of note in this particular episode. The first is from 21 minutes and 32 seconds to 21 minutes and 35 seconds. And the second is from 44 minutes and 40 seconds to 45 minutes. So if you would like to avoid some of the heavier spoilers, please skip those time slots within this recording, and then you can continue on with the remainder of the episode. Thank you so much.
Chopper! Come back here, you rolling junk pile!
For those of us who have seen the Star Wars Rebels animated series, it's an easy sell to explain to people why it is an important part of your Star Wars viewing, and how it really enhances a lot of what we just talked about with the Star Wars films, and kind of when we come to the original Star Wars film, A New Hope, and you see the Rebel Alliance, you don't really have any backstory for any of them. And Star Wars Rebels at its core is really about telling people the backstory of not only the rebellion, but kind of some of these smaller groups that came together to form it. So, for me, I would definitely say that one of the great things about Star Wars Rebels, and a reason why any Star Wars fan should watch it, is you do get that backstory of the Rebel Alliance, and you do get to really see how it grew from a grassroots level where you just had these people that were not happy with their treatment under the Empire, and how that then grew into this huge alliance that was able to strike down the Empire. What do you guys think about that?
The show was pretty good, but it's like the storyline is really good. It shows how, like you said, it just all came together. How this one small group just became this huge thing.
Yeah, and you got to remember, this came out before Rogue One.
Yeah,
it came out before Solo, which kind of referenced the beginning of the Rebel Alliance there. So this was your first Disney era, because there was some, legacy stuff, but Disney era glimpse into the rebellion, that period between episode 3 and 4. And it really did a good job of just kind of showing what the Star Wars universe was like under the Imperial regime, and then these people fighting against it. It was, when it came out, it was a time frame we didn't know much about, and it really filled in a lot of those details.
It tied up some loose ends.
Yeah. And I mean, at its core, it's what makes many Star Wars films so great. It's about family, right?
Yeah, yeah.
This group of people that had been brought together from all different backgrounds had kind of created their own little family. And we see that same type of thing in the original Star Wars films with Luke and Han and Leia. And we see it, now within the sequel trilogy. We saw it within the prequels, although there it was literally creating some families, but with Anakin and Padme. But, I feel like that's kind of something that's at the core of a lot of the Star Wars stories that we see is, it's about a larger battle, but it's also about these families and fighting to protect each other and to make the galaxy a better place for them.
Yeah, it was cool to see because you had those other characters. You had Ezra, who was a kid that the kids could relate to. You had your older Jedi. You had these characters that you wouldn't think would come together and work. And like you're saying, by the end they became a family and they had each other's back. And it was really cool to see that. And the great thing about Rebels, is that there was a through line throughout the whole series. It wasn't just these one-shot episodes, and there were smaller stories in it, but they all tied together. And you watch all 4 seasons, and you could see they were planning stuff for the end at the very beginning. And that's what I really enjoyed about it. This wasn't a kid's show. This was a family show that had a lot for the kids, a lot for the adults. And the characters grew, which is unusual in a cartoon series. And I think Disney did a great job because they allow the characters to change. Like a lot of times there's merchandise behind these things. And by the time the show airs, you don't want the character to change because then the merchandise doesn't match. They weren't afraid with that. Like they gave Ezra a drastic change. They changed his lightsaber when they had toys already out. They killed off characters that were fairly popular. And that's what I like. They put story above everything else with Rebels.
And then Kanan was blind too.
Yeah. I mean, talk about changing a character, right? So one of the things that we will say before we get into a real deep dive on some of this stuff is this is going to contain some light spoilers. Certainly we'll try to avoid some of the deeper stuff, but we don't want to ruin the experience for people that want to start watching it from the beginning. But certainly we want to give them enough to explain to them why. For me, when I started watching it, season 1 started a little bit slow, but what I will say is that it got into it pretty quick, and you started to get a feel for what the stakes were. And one of the great things about this series, and it's a light spoiler, but I think it's pertinent, is that this is during a time when supposedly the Jedi had been eradicated from the galaxy. And one of the things that you find out pretty quick in this series is that that's not necessarily true. I mean, there are still some Force sensitives out there, and Kanan that you guys were talking about is a former Jedi Padawan who had escaped the Jedi Purge. And you come to understand that, that he is out there. He's trying to avoid the Inquisitors and Darth Vader and the factions within the Empire that are trying to hunt him down. But that definitely added some pretty significant stakes to the show as well.
Yeah, and even you mentioned the Inquisitors. We had never seen those before. Like that was a really cool aspect to add in there. Like they're these, Darth Vader Jedi bounty hunters. That Darth Vader hired. It was cool stuff.
The first Inquisitor in the first season, he had my favorite lightsaber.
The Grand Inquisitor with his kind of double-bladed spinning saber.
Yeah.
And again, everyone loves the Jedi primarily because of the lightsabers, and then you kind of get introduced to the Sith throughout the other films and realize that they have their natural enemies. But here you really get to see Kanan and eventually Ezra, who's also Force sensitive, get hunted down by these Inquisitors, and eventually we get into even a portion of the show where Ahsoka makes an appearance, and we've talked a lot about her via other episodes of our podcast, and certainly within the Clone Wars, she was a big reason why we thought people should watch the Clone Wars, and here she is again in Rebels, and you kind of get to see an older, more mature version of her and just how powerful she's become.
Yeah, that was really cool. Do you want to tell that story?
Oh yeah, so we were in Disney when that episode was released, and we were watching it, and me, Dad, and Stitch all freaked out, and then Mom jumped up and she's like, what happened? Is something wrong?
So not to give spoilers, but it was a surprise that Ahsoka was going to be in that episode, and we were just watching. We had a long day in the parks, we were tired, but we're like, oh, the finale's on, we have to watch the season 1 finale, and we put it on, and we just me and Sparrow and Stitch just jumped out of bed. We're like, oh my goodness, that's incredible. It's so cool.
Like, no way.
Yeah.
Who was Ahsoka?
Yeah, you weren't familiar with Clone Wars at that time.
No, I was. I watched but
Sparrow
I was just acting. I was like, no way. And then in my head I was like, who is she?
That's the cool thing about this series too, is that there are those surprises all along the way. That's just one of many.
Right. And again, we're going to touch on some things that would be considered some light spoilers, but in no way does it take away from not just seeing that the characters show up, but some of the scenarios that they show up in, and some of the things that they display in terms of how their powers have grown since you've seen them in the Clone Wars, or some of these characters have been have tiebacks all the way to the prequels, with some of the the clone characters, the clone commandos making an appearance. So there are so many tie-ins, and it actually kind of goes into another item that I thought was really cool about the show, which is that it has a lot of nice nods back to even the original artwork and concept work from the original Star Wars film. So you've got a character that's part of this group of the Spectres that are the crew of the ship called the Ghost, and that's going to be important for you because that is one of the big things that we saw in the trailer for The Rise of Skywalker, was theoretically that is the Ghost showing up in that trailer. But this character named Zeb is actually based on a prototype Wookiee from Ralph McQuarrie, the guy that designed and came up with a lot of these designs for characters within the original Star Wars film.
And that's what I liked about it too, because I grew up looking at those pictures of McQuarrie, but then to see that kind of like in animation form, and even the way Darth Vader looked, it's very much McQuarrie influenced, and it was really cool to see that. A beautiful series just to look at. Like, not to knock Resistance, but that's more kind of anime style, which it's not my thing. But like Rebels was just beautiful. The backgrounds, the planets they went on, even the Bendu that came later on was just the cool, awesome looking character. A lot of good design in that. Yeah.
Another like swirl we forgot to say, but we've talked a lot about is Darth Vader's in the show.
Yeah, which I mean, again, and there are scenes where he and Ahsoka run into each other, which has callbacks all the way to the Clone Wars. Again, for those people who have only seen the films, you're not even necessarily aware that Ahsoka is a character, but she was the Padawan of Anakin Skywalker during the period of the Clone Wars, and so this is someone that he had a very deep attachment to, and who, losing her, quote unquote, was one of the things that is attributed to him falling to the dark side. And so, now he is this character of Darth Vader, and he can't have these reminders that he used to be so, such a pure good character within the film. So it's even more important for him to eradicate those type of characters. And there are some really cool confrontations between the two of them within the arc of the Rebel series.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you guys had jump out, at you about what really struck you as being, great reason to watch the Star Wars Rebel series?
That only the best clone is in it, Captain Rex. I really like that episode, and that there's a lot of really cool surprises in it, and it's a really, really good show.
Yeah.
This is a good reason too, in my opinion. That you may not start off liking it, but once you really get a feel of the characters and everything, you're gonna really start to really like the show. Because when it started and I just saw it, I was like, wow, that's cool. I was like, no, I didn't really like it. But when I watched it more and more, and then I got to know the characters more, I started really liking the show. So if you watch the first episode, you're like, this isn't that good, keep on watching, because you're going to get a feeling of the characters, and then you're going to you might start liking.
I think that's an excellent point, because I had the exact same experience. I wasn't completely tied in until the first time Kanan ignited his lightsaber, and I was like, whoa, what just happened? Because again, there was really no, other than the fact that Yoda and Obi-Wan were kind of out there in the galaxy, there had not been any indication, in all the films, when you hear them talking about Luke being their last hope, and it's pretty well assumed that all the Jedi are gone, and clearly that's not the case as you watch this show. So, and as you pointed out, there's so many surprises within this series that every time one gets revealed, it just hooks you even deeper.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
What's nice too is they didn't knock you over the head with references from the original movies. The characters would appear, but it wasn't too much. It wasn't fan service. It wasn't every episode there was somebody from the original trilogy or prequel trilogy make an appearance, but they were peppered throughout the series. It added to what was already good. It added that little bit more spice to it that kind of kept you going. It was like, oh, that's cool. I expect Wedge to show up here. I didn't expect, C-3PO to show up here.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people that don't understand what a important character Wedge is. I mean, he's really the only non-major character that, shows up in all three of the original films.
Yep.
And it was cool for him to kind of get a little bit more of a backstory and get to see his character. It sounds like we may be getting to see some more of him within The Rise of Skywalker, which I would be completely for.
Oh, yeah, I hope so.
Definitely.
Right.
You might die.
The other thing, what did you guys think about the droids? What did you guys think about Chopper?
I really like Chopper.
He's a really funny droid.
Yeah, he was really fun.
And like we mentioned earlier, it's really amazing how they can have these droids, these robots, and give them their own personalities. And, Chopper may look a little similar to R2-D2, but he is a completely different droid, different attitude and different skill sets. And he was great.
And they all have attitudes, right?
Yeah.
Even, I forget the name of it. They had a droid, I don't know if it's season 4 or season 3. I forget his name, but they had some other droids in there too that were really entertaining and different looks at it.
Was that when they went on kind of like an all droid mission?
I think so. Yeah.
I think BB-8 is really one of the only droids with not really a mean attitude.
Yeah.
Besides C-3PO.
No, I think that's an excellent point. And actually, it just triggered what I was thinking of earlier, which is that, to the point about within Star Wars Rebels, there's a lot of references for the fans that get into some of the deeper content. But it always seems like Star Wars at its best has a good mix of things where new viewers don't feel like they're missing out on stuff, but people who are super familiar with the universe get to see those little Easter eggs kind of hidden through there and get the nods that Dave Filoni or the creators have put in there for them. And which is one of the reasons I started the podcast, right? Because there are people who've just seen the movies and I want them to know that there are other things that are going to increase their enjoyment of it.
Yes.
And there is a ton of that within Star Wars Rebels. So I think that was a great point that you made, Tony.
Yeah. And even, we mentioned Ahsoka being in it, but I knew about her, but I hadn't watched Clone Wars before Rebels. And I knew enough from Rebels and the importance of it just by watching the show. And I think, Rebels is it's only 4 seasons and it's not even, 22 episodes per season. Some of them are shorter. So it's a good introduction. If you're thinking about Clone Wars, but it's daunting, I suggest, starting with Rebels and getting a taste there. And especially now with Disney Plus and everything being on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that was one of the reasons why when Tom and I were talking about what were some ideas for future shows, I knew with Disney Plus coming out and all this content that was going to be available, it would be easy for people who are Star Wars fans to go in and go, oh well, there's some cartoons, but they're probably more for kids. And I would agree that Resistance, not only does it have that anime style, but it's definitely for a younger audience. But there, even within that, there's some great tie-ins to things that we're familiar with from the sequel trilogy. But certainly in Clone Wars, that will definitely increase your enjoyment of the prequel films and your understanding of that whole time frame. And Rebels really gives you a nice, it fills out some of the things that are happening in that time period right before the fourth episode, A New Hope, right? So it's cool when they fill in those gaps in what we know from Star Wars.
And even you mentioned there weren't supposed to be any Jedi and we found out Kanan's around, but it doesn't leave that plot hole out there. By the time the series ends, it kind of explains why Luke is the only hope. And so I like that. It played within the boundaries, but it played very well. And it leads almost, right up into Rogue One and even beyond. Like you get to the epilogue of the season finale and there's some roads it could take that I'm excited for. I'm hoping maybe once episode 9 is over, they could go back and explore these avenues that they have opened up.
Well, and some of these characters could show up at any time, right? We know that they're temporarily out of the picture, but they could come back at any time. We could potentially see some of them within Rise of Skywalker, or even after, if they go another route with what they've got going on there. So a lot of exciting opportunities for them in creating new Star Wars content.
Yeah.
Now, what did you guys think about Thrawn?
I really like the character of Thrawn, and we kind of don't know what's going to happen with him next because it kind of just ends off with him just like there, and we don't know what's going to happen with him next. Yeah.
What did you think? What did you think, Stitch?
He was a really cool bad guy, but as Sparrow said, at the end he kind of disappeared.
What about his character, though? What did you think about?
He was a really,
I
really liked his character.
He was really cool.
And smart. Like, they made him a brilliant guy. Like, you really, at some points, you really wondered, like, how are the rebel crew going to get out of this? Like, how Thrawn is, like, getting them at every turn and knows their every move. And, you know, I grew up when the original Thrawn trilogy books came out, and that was amazing because that was, like, the first new Star Wars we had gotten since Return of the Jedi, you know, 10 years later. And it was so cool to see. And so, like, when Disney bought Star Wars and they kind of wiped all that away, that was the one character I was like, oh, but I really want Thrawn to still be a part of the Star Wars universe. And they found a way to do it with Rebels. And it's the same character, but in different settings, right? And they kind of changed his backstories from Legends. But he's a really cool character.
Yeah.
And one of the real, kind of downers, I guess, and I was in the same boat as you, Tony. After the original trilogy Star Wars films came out, there was kind of a dark period for Star Wars fans. There was no new content on the horizon. We didn't know if we'd ever get another movie. And that was actually one of the panels I made sure I got to at Grand Rapids Comic-Con with Timothy Zahn in there. He's the author that wrote the Thrawn trilogy and the new Thrawn trilogy, and is going to be writing some new Thrawn books. But all of a sudden you have this character that is terrifying in a completely different way. With Darth Vader and the Emperor, they were strong in the Force, and they could, take you on via the sheer power in the Force and wipe you out. But Thrawn was terrifying in the sense that he was always one step ahead, and he could tell what you were going to do just based on the artwork that he would study for your culture. And the downside to that was that they killed off his character within that expanded universe trilogy. And that was a big loss. So now that Disney has basically got a chance to restart that, we have that character back. He's still a very intimidating and imposing character, and he's still in play. And it'll be interesting to see if they pick up that and go anywhere with it after the end of Star Wars Rebels.
Well, we actually don't know if they killed him. No,
he's saying in the original books when I was a kid, they did, yeah.
Can you believe that we were at one point we were kids?
Hard to imagine, right?
A couple of years ago. All right, so there is another character in Star Wars Rebels, and we actually get to see him a little bit in the Clone Wars, but we get more of Hondo Ohnaka, and I know that you guys are looking forward to going to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and seeing that animatronic, but what do you guys think of Hondo?
He's a really funny character, and I really like his character.
Mm-hmm.
He actually had a pretty interesting arc within Star Wars Rebels, right? He started off as a pretty, almost a bad guy, and was almost an ally and a friend by the end of it, right?
Yeah.
And almost, I was going to say father figure, more like an uncle figure to Ezra, and kind of teaching him the non-Force ways of how to survive in the universe and stuff. And yeah, he was a good character. I wasn't expecting to like, and then when they said he was going to be in Galaxy's Edge as the one, kind of running the Smuggler's Run, it's like, oh, that makes perfect sense. I mean, it worked out well, and what they've done with that character is amazing. And Jim Cummings as the voice actor just does a fantastic job with him.
Yes.
And a lot of humor and a lot of it's a great job.
Yeah, there's actually a similarity kind of between the faith that Luke had in his father, Darth Vader, and the fact that Vader was able to redeem himself. And, kind of a similar arc between Ezra and Hondo in the sense that Ezra kept trusting Hondo against everyone else's advice. And even the viewers were probably sitting there going, don't trust him. He's just going to look out for himself. But it changed his character over the course of that series to the point where he really was someone you could almost trust.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're saying, like before, there's character development in the show. They're not just one-dimensional characters that they're the same in the beginning and the end. Yeah. These characters do change and grow.
Oh, you can almost trust him. Depends on what he wants you to do.
So the other thing that they always put into any good Star Wars series is you get a ship that you can totally fall in love with. What did you guys think of the Ghost? Did you start to like it as much as the Millennium Falcon, or kind of think it was a cool ship that you'd want to fly?
I definitely like it as much as the Millennium Falcon. It's a really cool ship. I really like the design of it.
Yeah.
It's really cool, but in my opinion, nothing can tie up or beat the Millennium Falcon.
I can totally relate to both of those because I liked it a lot more than I thought I was going to at the beginning. But yeah, it's hard to beat the Millennium Falcon.
We had the Lego set of the Ghost too. That was a really
Yeah,
cool
that
set.
was a
Yeah.
cool
'Cause it had the
set.
ship come out of the back.
Oh, that is cool. Yeah, what did they call it? Phantom, right?
I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That sounds right.
Yep. Awesome. So what else is there anything else that you guys would point out about Star Wars Rebels that is a great reason why someone should go out there and check it out now that it's available on Disney Plus?
They might. I didn't watch it a lot, so I have nothing.
Well, it sounds like you're the person we're trying to get to watch it, right?
Yeah, I already am intrigued.
There's Darth Maul plays a major character in this,
Yes.
which was interesting to see him again evolve and change and like where he winds up.
There was also this weird rebel bounty hunter guy where he would he came in at season 3, I think, but he would start off running, but then he would end up going on 4 legs.
Oh, that was Thrawn's guy, right?
Yeah,
Thrawn's,
I
yeah.
forget his name though.
Yeah, he's the Nogiri. He's Thrawn's bodyguard, right?
Was it Rook?
Yeah, Ruck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked him.
Yeah, and that is it's actually a really good point because that is another example of how even though they got rid of a lot of this information from the expanded universe or what we're calling Legends now, they are not opposed to bringing some of these things back and reusing them. And it seems like the stuff that they're bringing back is some of the stuff that I miss the most when they kind of, put it all into Legends. Some of the very best stories or some of the very best characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it kind of delved into a lot of what we like about Star Wars and dug in deep. Like there's a whole lot of more Mandalorian stuff in there. There's a lot of even relationships between Hera and Kanan, like mom and dad type stuff, and then just going deep into the universe. It really does a great job of going into depth with the Star Wars universe, but still keeping it tight to that family. And then seeing how, we touched on this in the beginning, but how the rebellion grew. And this group of rebels was really key to that. And Ezra was key to that of, convincing all these separate bands of rebels to kind of join together and fight against the Empire and even bring up whole planets against the Empire.
Yeah. And it's also interesting. I mean, we haven't really gotten into a lot of the other ships, but you get to see where the Y-Wings that they used against the Death Star came from and the B-Wings that showed up in, some of the later films. The only time I can think of seeing in the original trilogy was Return of the Jedi. There were a couple, but, you get to kind of see how some of these ships, how the rebellion came by some of these ships. And, again, the other character that we really haven't talked much about is Mon Mothma, who didn't play, she was a key figure within the original trilogy films, but you didn't really get to see a lot of her. But you get a lot of her backstory within Star Wars Rebels as well.
Yeah.
And we know that Lucasfilm thinks Rebels is important because there are hints to that. Like you said, in episode 9, we think we see the Ghost. But in Rogue One, we see Chopper in the background. We see the Ghost ship flying around. We hear Hera's last name announced over the loudspeaker. So this is part of the universe, and Lucasfilm wants you to know these characters.
Yeah, I know that when Stitch was talking about Captain Rex earlier, or was it Sparrow?
Sparrow.
I think it was Sparrow.
He talked about Captain Rex, and then, there's been people who say that Captain Rex was one of the rebels that kind of helped take the bunker in Return of the Jedi. There was a rebel that looked a lot like him. So there's, again, the way that they're kind of weaving a lot of this stuff into existing in some of the old content. It's the layers of the onion that you peel. Every time you get another piece of information and go back and watch some of this stuff, there's just that much more to see.
Yeah.
I just had one quick question for you. I want to know, what is your favorite Rebels character?
My favorite Rebels character? Oh boy. My immediate answer, the one that jumps to mind first, is Ahsoka, because I love Ahsoka. I think she is just such a special character. But I also love Kanan because he is such a flawed character. He has so much doubt. He never really got to become a full-blown Jedi. He was just a Padawan when basically his entire world got stripped away. So he went through a really dark time. He was in a dark place until Hera found him. And, the family around him is really what brought him back in line. And then, he ended up having to make himself better to teach Ezra throughout the series. So it was really cool to see him grow. And, he was a very important member of that crew. That's a great question.
Well, Kanan is actually my favorite too. And I really liked how we thought the wolves thing were saying Doom when they were saying Dune, and that's King's real name. And it was also really sad when King died. I actually almost cried, like Sparrow over here cried when Han Solo died in Force Awakens.
Well, and that's what's so great about Star Wars, right? That it's just a movie. It's all made up, but we form these connections to these characters because we kind of get to go through some of these things with them. So, again, then anytime something strikes that chord deep inside you like that, they're doing a great job.
Yeah.
Awesome. I know there's so much to talk about. It's hard to do it all in one show, but I think we did a pretty good job of establishing for people why it's worth it, worth their time to go out there and enjoy it. And certainly, like Tony said, it's a great thing to watch as a family. If you've got, kids that are just getting into Star Wars, or, even teenagers can get into this. It's a good way to kind of stay in touch with just being a kid and enjoying what you're doing. And it's a lot of fun as an adult too, to get to experience that with your kids. It's not quite taking them to a major film in a theater, but it's a great chunk of family time every week.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, now you could binge it. We had to wait, every week and then a year for the next episode. But what was cool is we really enjoyed Star Wars had a web series on after each episode, Rebels Recon, right?
Yeah.
And they would explain, what happened in the episode and make the ties for you in case you missed something, and then kind of leave you with, well, maybe this will happen or maybe this, and they'll have interview with the creators and the people behind it. So you really got to look to see how the people working on this really had a passion for it, and they loved this series and they gave it its all, and that really came through. And it was cool that Lucasfilm invested in that, because it really showed that their love for this show. And then, it helped us intrigue, and it really was exciting when a new Rebels Recon would come out. We would watch that, almost as exciting as an episode itself.
Yeah.
Like, with the Rebels Recon, you can tell that right when they're done making an episode, they start making another one, because after every single Rebel Recon, they give a sneak peek of another one, and it just shows how focused they were on Rebels.
Yeah.
They put all their focus into Rebels. They didn't focus on any movies or anything. They just really focused on Rebels to get it out.
Yeah, and they're still on YouTube, so I would recommend, if you're going to watch Rebels, seek out the Rebels Recon as well and watch it with the episodes.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see if I haven't really gone in since Disney Plus came out and looked, but they may also have it under the extras for each episode. They may have it stored within there as well. So it certainly is a great point. And, we talk about The Mandalorian coming out and the pain of having to wait a week between episodes, but that is a great reason to not try to go too fast with this kind of content. There's so much to talk about, and you don't want to rush through it and then miss really important stuff. So I think we'll go ahead and wrap it there. That was a great conversation, guys. Thank you so much for coming on. It was a lot of fun. Stitch, do you have a song to sing by any chance? My wife told me I had to ask if you were going to sing a song today. Putting you on the spot.
I don't know.
You can't make up a Rebel song? I'm sure there's a Rebel song deep inside you there.
Star Wars Rebels. I didn't really like you at first, but now I really do. There's a song.
I'll take it. Now I'll be allowed to stay in my house. Terrific. So thank you guys so much for coming on. It was a great conversation. I'm looking forward to, I still want to do another episode, talk about kind of how we came to Star Wars differently in different generations, but we'll plan that for a little bit down the road and have you guys back on for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us, Rob. This was a lot of fun. Like
you.
we said, we love your podcast. You have a passion for Star Wars, and you really care about your show, and that comes through. So we any way we could support you, we'd love to do it. Love talking to you about Star Wars. So thanks for having us on.
I really appreciate you guys coming on. I listen to your podcast all the time as well, and it definitely is a lot of fun to see you guys enjoying all of the Disney content kind of as a family, which is exactly how it should be enjoyed. So terrific. Yeah, definitely check out Tony and his boys on Disney Discussions podcast. Tony, do you want to tell folks how they can find your podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. The easiest way is Disney Discussions with an S at the end, .com, DisneyDiscussions.com. We have links to all of our social media. I'm very active on Twitter So that's probably the best social media to get me on. And we're in all the podcast apps, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Just search for Disney. Stitcher. Just search for Disney Discussions. We're a family-friendly podcast, which some people make fun of me. It's like, why do you even have to say that? But there are some Disney podcasts that are not family-friendly. So we'd like to make something you could listen to with the whole family. And like you said, Rob, we go over everything within the the Disney universe, including Star Wars and Marvel and Muppets and all that. And
we've actually been going over Star Wars for a lot with like the movies, the new movie coming out. We
talked about the rides and
Star
Disney
Wars
parks.
Land. And there's like, I feel like we're turning into a Star Wars podcast.
But we love Disney. We talk about it all the time. So we figured why not just record ourselves and see if people like it. And, you know, the community out there has been great. So, if you haven't already checked us out, please do so. Disney Discussions.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. They're a lot of fun to listen to and certainly a great use of your time. So, again, thank you guys so much. And we will get back to doing the Holonet News. Okay, for this week, the Holonet News is going to be a little bit short. I don't want to have the podcast run too long, but the major items of note that have been going on here the past couple of weeks since our last episode is, first and foremost, the Mandalorian first 3 episodes now are out. They had 2 episodes released a couple weeks ago, and then this past Friday, we got episode 3. So big congratulations to Dominic Pace, who we'd done an interview with a couple of weeks ago for our last show. His character did get featured fairly prominently in that 3rd episode. Could not be more excited and more happy for Dominic. Just a quality guy, and really great to see his character get some screen time in that episode. So definitely go check it out if you have not already. I don't want to go too much into the details of those episodes at this point. I do want to put out a separate show where we discuss that or make that possibly part of our next podcast where we can kind of review the first half of season 1. So look for that. But the other major item that occurred within this past couple of weeks is the release of Jedi Fallen Order. I've been playing that now for about a week and a half. It is definitely really a great story-driven Star Wars game. Great concept in the sense that you're playing as a Padawan who survived the Purge and kind of on a quest to do your part to restore the Jedi Order. So very much looking forward to seeing how that game turns out. And I will also note that I am going to be able to give kind of a spoiler-free review of the Oculus VR game Vader Immortal. I should have that in hand this coming week. So look for that in an upcoming episode as well. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us via email at jtapodcast@gmail.com or on our social media accounts on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest at JTA Podcast. Happy to have a conversation with you about anything Star Wars related. And I do want to point out that if you would be so kind as to tell a friend about the show, that's going to help us grow and will be greatly appreciated. And really looking forward to hearing more from our listeners. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for listening. You are the reason that we're here and the reason that we do what we do. Looking forward to having Tom Howell back with me in these next couple episodes upcoming as we kind of get back to more of a normal format. And hopefully you guys all have a wonderful and safe Thanksgiving this week. So we will be looking forward to talking to you guys after you get back from the holiday. Thank you guys so much, and may the Force be with you.